In Bubble, we can use variables. Variables allow us to save a value such as a number or a text or really any data type in one place. It's an example of us building in a modular fashion because instead of writing or hard coding the value, we save the value to a variable and then we reference this variable in our elements and in our workflows. If we have to make a change, we can change the variable itself, and then automatically all the elements and workflows it's referenced in will be updated. There's two kinds of variables, being on-page variables and database variables. Let's jump into our editor and just go over a couple of examples. So I'm sitting here in the editor of this e-commerce application on the checkout flow. So a user here can go through the process of completing a payment flow, and you can see that there's various steps. So they'll see the shopping cart first, they click on next step, and then they see the payment method and they can click pay now, and then they'll see this new step where there's a confirmation that they've received their order. Now, what I want to show you first is what an on-page variable is. So if I jump up to here and I open up the pop-up hidden variables, which we've explained in other modules and videos, basically it's a container which allows us to store variables, on-page variables. And if I click on one of this one, being var checkout step, what it allows me to do is I have this group, and in this group I can store pieces of information and data here. And what I'm storing is I'm actually pulling from the page URL this parameter name of step, and I'm trying to grab out the number, so what step we are on. To explain it in a bit more detail, I'll jump over to this preview page over here. And what you can see in the URL is it says we're on step 1. And what this variable is pulling out specifically is this number 1. And if I click on next step, we go to step 2, and the variable is now pulling out step 2. And if we go over to step 3, the variable is now pulling out the number 3. And based on this step, we are seeing different groups and different elements visible on our page. So if I go back to our editor and I just drill down on how this is occurring, if I click on this particular group over here, we can see that there's a condition that based on this variable and the value that is being saved in this variable is choosing whether to hide or display this particular element. Now, the reason why it's useful that we're using a variable is instead of directly referencing the parameter, we reference the variable. So if I ever change the name of the parameter from step to something else, it means that I only need to update that variable, that reference, instead of every single group, which actually is referring to this variable. Now what I want to go over is database variables. So we can store values in the database that we want to use throughout our application. And an example which is related to what we're doing today is the app fee. So this application that we can see is a marketplace. So there's buyers and sellers, and when a buyer purchases a product from a seller, we want to take a percentage cut from that sale. Now this percentage cut can actually change. So the app fee could be 5%, it could be 10%, it could be 20%. And if I go through my pay now flow, what you can see here is we have this charge the current user step. And under this charge the current user step, we have the app fee, which is where we define my take as the marketplace provider. So how much money do I want to receive from this sale? And the way that we've defined this is we have the current page's order total price multiplied by 0.1. So what we're saying is 10% of this order is actually my money as the marketplace provider. And we've hard coded this 0.1 value in, as you can see. And that isn't the ideal way to do so. The reason why is just say in the future we actually want to change this value to 15%, or we want to reduce it to 8%, the only way I can make this change is I need to actually physically jump into the editor, manually make this change, and then deploy the update live. Instead, what we want to do is we want to set up a database variable. So the way that we set this up, if I jump over to my data tab, is we have this app variables data type. And what we do is we've added a field called app fee, which is a number. And what we try to do is we try to capture all our database variables in one place. So we have this app variable, and then if I jump over to my app data, what you can see is that there is one object under this app variable data type where we capture all of our database variables. And in this first object, what we have is we have the app fee being listed as 0.1. So if I ever want to update the app fee in the future, all I need to do is update this database object. But to make this actually work, what I need to do is I need to go back to my workflow. And instead of writing 0.1 here, I want to do a search for app variables, first item, app fee. So now what I have done is I've referenced to the database variable. And if in the future I want to change my app fee, I don't have to change this formula itself. I just need to change that value that I have in my database. As you can imagine, also, there are some cases where we should be using on-page variables, such as the step counter, because we don't need to save that information in our database. And then in other cases, our variables should be database variables, because in this particular example, we want the app fee to actually be stored in the database and not be able to be updated or changed because it's saved on the page itself.